Secretary Valentine.
Thank you, Muriel. Hello, everybody. I really thank everyone for joining us this evening, once again virtually. The leadership and engagement from the Central Virginia chapter of WTS is unparalleled. And I just really want to thank everyone who made the annual meeting so great. I do remember Jennifer climbing on a front loader, creating a video so everybody would come to Richmond, so Richmond would win, and we did, and then it was virtual. And so it was great, and you all made it great, and we thank you for that. And so tonight, I am able to be with three great leaders in Virginia. I will say we have a remarkable transportation system with the Port of Virginia, Virginia Space, 66 airports, roads, bridges, highways, the third largest highway network in the country, rail, transit, metro, 1,600 miles of trails, which are becoming much more and more important every day. And all of us are supported by the Department of Motor Vehicle, the Motor Vehicle Dealer Board, the Office of Intermodal Planning and Investment, and the Office of Transportation Research and Innovation. A remarkable system. And I am so proud to be a part of this team. And this evening, I am actually joined by three incredible leaders, all of whom I consider transformative. It's been such a privilege for me to be able to work with these individuals. Jennifer Mitchell is Director of the Department of Rail and Public Transportation, Stephen Britch, the VDOT Commissioner, and the CEO and Executive Director of the Port of Virginia, Stephen Edwards. So this evening, I thought I would actually kind of open the session with some of the transformative things that are taking place. And the truth is, we could just spend the entire evening talking about this. The Commissioner Britch, I can see laughing, and yes, it's so true. But Jennifer, this is just a little too obvious. So I'm going to start with you. And you and I were together. We've been working years on this. We were together on March 30th up in Alexandria. Secretary Buttigieg joined us for the announcement of the commercial close, the completion of the definitive agreements for transforming rail in Virginia, a unique partnership with CSX, Amtrak, Virginia Rail Express, and the Commonwealth. So many of those with us tonight have probably seen some interviews with Jennifer and me about this. But Jennifer, I thought maybe just a quick overview of the project and perhaps a quick update on where we are.
Sure, and thank you to everybody in WTS Central Virginia chapter for having me here, having us here. It's great to see everybody. As Secretary Valentine mentioned, on March 30th, we did announce the closing of our various deals with CSX, Amtrak, and VRE. It was actually 9 agreements that we had to sign at the same time. We then also went to financial close on April 14th. So with this deal, we're going to be doubling Amtrak service across the state and also increasing our VRE service on the Fredericksburg line by 60%. It includes both right-of-way acquisition and infrastructure projects. We'll be acquiring essentially half of CSX's RF&P line between Richmond and DC. Also the Buckingham branch, which is an east-west line between Doswell to Clifton Forge, which we hope to preserve for future passenger service. And then also building the new Long Bridge, a new 2-track bridge across the Potomac River between Virginia and DC, which is really one of the biggest bottlenecks across the East Coast. Huge project, very transformative, certainly not just for Virginia, but for the entire Southeast, and is really going to open up the Southeast rail corridor. And then on May 5th, we announced with the governor in Christiansburg that we'll be extending a second train to Roanoke and extending both of those trains eventually to the New River Valley. So that's our Western Rail Initiative. And we had reached a definitive term sheet with Norfolk Southern. We're now going to continue forward on our agreements. And we're also beginning the preliminary engineering for Long Bridge. And final design on our 4th track project as well. So a lot going on. We're setting up the new Virginia Passenger Rail Authority, which is very exciting, with a new executive director, DJ Stadler. We're transitioning staff over right now, and very exciting time, and really appreciate all the support that the secretary and the governor have put behind this. It really is going to be transformative for transportation in the state.
Yes, and you know how important that all of Virginia is affected by this. Addressing that bottleneck across the Potomac and dedicating a bridge to only passenger and commuter rail opened up capacity for us to expand and improve rail everywhere. So the focus really being on rail operations and performance. So anyway, well, thank you. I have a few more questions about that, but you know, at the port, there have been a great deal of transformation as well, with the expansion at VIG and NIT, Virginia International Gateway and Norfolk International Terminal, the investments being made there. We are dredging at the port to 55 feet to once again be the deepest port on the East Coast of the United States. And in leadership, we have Stephen Edwards, who has accepted this position to be CEO of the Virginia Port Authority. He was formerly CEO and president of TRAPAC based out in Los Angeles. And so we are now very fortunate to have him. First day, I believe, was January 19th.
That's right.
So yeah. I remember my oldest child's birthday. So anyway, it's really funny that all these transportation landmarks land on some anniversary of mine. But anyway, shows you how exciting my life can be. So Stephen Edwards, what made you decide to come to the Port of Virginia?
Oh, I think the attraction of coming to the Port of Virginia was it's really the fact that you've got the landlord port authority, you've got the operating entities of the business. So it's a unique port. It's unique in the sense that you can really, all the levers that are available to operate well, to create capacity. You're an infrastructure builder as a port. You are an operator of the port. You go beyond the port into how you economically develop within the Commonwealth. And there aren't that many roles in the world where you can say, you can look at that whole picture, and you've either got the levers to control it, or you've got influence within those areas. So it was a unique opportunity to take something that I knew I knew from the industry. We're not a huge industry. Most of the players in the industry know roughly who's who and what's going on. To say, okay, here's a facility that's got good support, has had great investments. And now you can say, well, what can we do with it, and where can we take it, and to what level can we take it? And that was just an opportunity that I thought professionally that sounded pretty exciting. So jumped in with both feet and found out everything that I hoped it would be is what it should be, and I'm really looking forward to see where we go.
Yes, as we all are, and we're all just so grateful and proud that you said yes and you're here working with us. Commissioner Britch, there are a number of projects and issues that I could talk to you about being transformative, and I hope to hit on some of them this evening. But from my perspective, I think one of the ways that you have really separated your leadership from others, I think it's going to be a legacy for you, is how you look at the life cycle of assets, how we manage our assets, our aging infrastructure. Because as we are trying to expand capacity and develop new infrastructure, it's really the core of what we do is managing the assets that we have. And yesterday was that just yesterday? God, a lot of life happens. At the Commonwealth Transportation Board, you were talking about Virginia's strategy for dealing with special structures, vital structures in Virginia, often very complex, movable bridges, tunnels, and how we really creating something that's first in the country. And so it's called the Health Index. And if you wouldn't mind just sharing with folks, your plan for how Virginia can really position itself to manage its assets.
Madam Secretary, I honestly, I could probably talk about an hour on this subject, and I think I have it.
For those listening, I will tell you, this is so true.
It is. So but first and foremost, I wish we could be there in person. I think the four of us up on a stage would really be great to have the interaction. But having said that, Secretary, I think you hit the nail on the head in your opening comments. That the department focuses on 57,000 miles of roadway, 20,000 structures, and 6 tunnels amongst the other assets that we have. And when you really look at that investment that Virginians have already made in their infrastructure, it's tremendous. And so I have a maintenance first philosophy that we really need to keep those assets in good working order. And in our first 6 months of being in this position, it really came to light that a number of these assets, most notably, I think 60% of these vital structures or special structures reside in the Hampton Roads area. Our tunnels, our movable bridges, the Berkeley Bridge and the Hampton and the James River Bridge. And we had a lightning strike, as I told the board multiple times, on the James River Bridge that took out capacitors and could not lift that structure to the marine traffic for 3 days. It is those types of investments that we need to be making. But one of the things that became very apparent in the decision making was, how do we prioritize and compare those special structures to them? And how do we make sure that we are taking a proactive approach to replacing certain components that, should they fail, could take out the operations of a facility? And I use the example of making sure that we're monitoring the health of our facilities and monitoring the health of the components of the facility. And an example would be one of our tunnels. The tunnel is comprised of mechanical, which could be ventilation systems, and our pumps to be able to pump water out of the tunnel if should it rain or we have a leak or something to that effect. But what is critical to the operations of that facility on a day-to-day basis? And when do we start replacing those assets when their useful life is up? And how critical is it that we replace it? So a pump at the bottom of the tunnel that might have a 30-year useful life, but it's 45 years old, is a significant risk to that tunnel flooding and not being operational. So how do we think this through, and how do we start prioritizing the limited budget we have, but making sure that we're prioritizing the right things within a facility? And then how do we compare facilities amongst themselves? And at least for our definition, we have 25 special structures across the state, and each one of them have their distinct features. So how do we make sure that we're taking what we have this year, $60 million, and next year we'll have $80 million because of the governor's omnibus bill and the foresight that we need to start investing in those structures. So, like I said, I can talk all day long on this, but I really think that this health index that we're developing is the first in the country. And so we might not get it right coming out of the gate, but we're going to have a process that we're going to be able to compare the critical components and make sure that we're putting the money in these limited funds in the right place at the right time to help reduce the risk that a failure won't happen. And so that we're servicing the facilities in the proper manner, or maintaining them in the proper manner, but more importantly, that they remain operational for our motorists and our users every single day. And these facilities are 24/7, so right. They're constantly moving.
And I think what's really important for those who are with us this evening to know is that during this administration, we are no longer kicking the can down the road. We're not passing it on to another administration. It really is a philosophy that if it is broken, we're going to find a way to fix it, or at least put it on a path. And we're very clear-eyed about identifying those problems. And so I really appreciate that kind of leadership in looking at the tremendous assets we have in Virginia and making sure they're safe. So I think that's just really, really important. Stephen Edwards, you've been at the port for these past, I guess the first quarter, well, I guess really first quarter of calendar year. And last year when COVID hit, there was great uncertainty across, the entire transportation sector for all of us. And of course, the volumes at the port dropped dramatically in the beginning. And then over the summer, we started noticing the volumes coming back. I remember in October, I was reading the draft release that we were at 270,000 units, TEUs. And I don't know, I was kind of surprised, and we started getting some monthly records. And so in April, I think it was released just yesterday, there was an all-time record set at the Port of Virginia for volume, 286,000 TEUs. What do you know to be happening in the world to account for this record-setting performance?
Well, I think the first thing is, if we'd have all known this a year ago, that this is what was going to happen, none of us would be sitting here, because we'd all be rich, basically. That's my first take on it, because I think most executives probably, and in most administrations, they probably were sitting around in March last year going, is this a financial crisis? Is this the scale of what happened in 2008? And do we stop CapEx? Do we, how do we tighten the belts? What is it going to look like? And we've had this remarkable, is it a U-shaped recovery, a V-shaped recovery? And in the containerized transportation world, or in shipping in general, it's been a very sharp V-shaped recovery. And the crazy thing being that the V coming out is getting bigger than it ever was before. I really do think this is entirely linked to buying patterns. And it's, I think we can all say from an economic perspective, the stimulus dollars that went into the economy last year, the stimulus dollars that are still going into the economy, and the amount of savings that have gone into people's pockets, as opposed to, has really risen the domestic spending of most people. So we're all buying things, and we're all doing home improvements, and lots and lots of home gyms have been built, and lots and lots of home improvements are being undertaken. And they require big things like washing machines and refrigerators, or if you're buying Pelotons or whatever you're buying. So if you look at the amount of goods that are just being brought in for merchandising goods coming into the country, that's what's really, really driven this up. And of course, I think the economists say there's still more disposable income, or there's still more savings out there in the general economy. So we've been a very fortunate sector. I think employment in our sector is slightly above where it was pre-pandemic. So you look at that from the Commonwealth's perspective, and you say, as a sector, we've completely rebounded. When you think where the tourism leisure industry took the hardest hit, we've come out the other side. And I think what we're now going to see, I wouldn't predict too far ahead here, I think we've got to keep the timeframes really short, is even as we get back to normality, the inventories for the goods we normally buy are low. So there's got to be new inventories brought in, because I don't know about you, but if you're coming back to work in the next few weeks or the next few months, I wouldn't be surprised if your wardrobe isn't quite ready.
Oh my goodness.
Right.
That is so true.
So people are going to have to go out and buy
shoes,
apparel. We may have been sitting, with a shirt on and shorts on Zoom for the last year or two, but now or last year and a half. Now we've got to go back to the office. We've got to get back dressed up for work. We're going to go back out for dinners. We're going to get back together with people for parties. That means we've got to buy apparel. We're going to go back on vacation, which means we're going to want the gear for vacations. So I think you're going to see we're going to be strong through the peak season, which for us is traditionally builds August, September, October, before we head into Black Friday. And then the question is, do we then go back to normal? Or so I would say at this point, it's going to be strong. Whether it's going to be record-setting strong for the rest of the year, I don't know, but it's certainly going to be strong through the summer, and as we head into, October is kind of the last arrivals for Black Friday. So I think in our industry, that's the period we're looking at.
So, for those of you who are with us this evening, I have said to Stephen early on I really look at the port as kind of a canary in the coal mine that, when it was down, how it kind of forecasted how things were going around not just Virginia, but really the country. And as it's been coming out, and you can see all the sectors starting to move. So anyway, so it sounds positive, really, really important for all of us. So Jennifer, Commissioner Britt mentioned in your response, Ms. Commissioner Britt, you brought up the omnibus bill, which was for those who follow legislative achievements, was a hallmark piece of legislation that passed the General Assembly, and it truly has affected so much. And you're going to hear different pieces of it. I think over the course of the evening, it restructured how we fund transportation for all of these individuals who are with us tonight, all of transportation. We created the governance structure for rail in Virginia. We made a financial commitment to a multimodal transportation system, which may be the greatest legacy of everything, but really, really important and often goes unnoticed. One of those things in the omnibus bill, Jennifer, was the TRIP program, Transit Ridership Incentive Program. I was speaking with Trip Pollard today, who many of us know from the environmentalist community, and I told him we named it for him. However, the TRIP program is really, really important because, during COVID, we learned so many lessons, but truly one of them was the vital role that transportation plays. And one of those lights was how important public transportation was to our essential workers who had to get to work every day. And so would you kind of describe the TRIP program we have and how we plan to move forward with that?
Sure. So there's really two components of the TRIP program, and it's interesting how a lot has changed over the past year in transit that is going to affect this program as well. One component of it is regional routes, and when that part of the program was created, we were thinking a lot about both large localities and smaller urbanized areas as well that are really trying to find better ways to incentivize some of these multi-jurisdictional routes that are providing either key commuting corridors or key connections to major activity centers, but are hard to fund because they cross jurisdictional boundaries. And so the TRIP program was really set up to help promote the use of that. Interestingly, since the pandemic and commuting patterns have changed and are going to continue to change, we're not quite sure exactly what we're going to see with those regional routes in the future. The other component of that, though, that is what we're calling our no fare or low income program, which it provides some funding to transit systems to be able to go fare free. It also allows them to go perhaps fare free in a district or offer low fare programs to certain populations within their service area. But a lot of the interest right now is really in fare free. And what we saw during the pandemic was that transit agencies stopped collecting fares out of a safety need, mainly for their operators, but also for their riders as well. And that has really managed to maintain ridership in a lot of ways. And this is not just a thing we're seeing in Virginia, it's all over the country. LA Metro, it has a huge program right now to go fare free. All sorts of places, Minneapolis, systems in Washington State. It is something that is really a national trend. And I think it's actually a really good one to look at all the other benefits that transit plays in society. And the reason we're trying to get more people onto buses and trains and out of their cars, I think those reasons are going to continue to exist even after we see some permanent changes in commuting patterns because of the pandemic. So we put out a request for information. Last year, we got some great ideas from a lot of the systems and localities across the state about the types of programs they would like to implement, both in the regional route program, but also in the no fare or low income category too. With the latter category, we would fund both capital, but also operating needs for several years for for 3 years, and then we would want the systems to commit to doing a 4th year as well, and hopefully maintaining a financial commitment to that. But we want to be able to continue to add more programs and more systems as we go along. So we're really excited about it. We brought the guidance to CTB this month. We have it out for public comment right now. So if any of you are listening and want to have an opportunity to look at it, give us some input, it's out there for the next 30 days. And we hope to get it, our application cycle started in summer. I know a lot of the systems that are interested in this have already gone through their budget cycle. So they're hoping to be able to do this in fiscal year 22. So anyway, we're really excited to see what this brings and the long-term changes that it could really introduce for transit across the state.
Yeah, I think something that's really interesting is that fares are an obstacle. It's how do we address that? And so anyway, and some of the COVID relief funds we're actually putting towards these fare-free pilots to see, you know, how we can integrate them as part of our system and really create accessibility for more people. Commissioner Britt, because this really connects with the port, and I know we have many projects, it's the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel. I will say that some of my best days were working on the PAFA, the Comprehensive Agreement, the Master Tolling Agreement. I remember I was at the groundbreaking and I was saying to the group, I said, "Oh, that was so easy." And a mayor said, "Oh no, it wasn't." But we made it through. It was, you know, one of those moments you kind of, we worked through it. And it was really great to get to that point with the Hampton Roads region to be able to deliver this project. I understand we have the tunnel boring machine. It has now been named. And do you have any updates? The groundbreaking was in October of 2020. So news on the tunnel.
Oh, I think that's well, I'll just say it. I love the project. And in fact, I'm going to go home tonight and see all the cranes that are out there and all the work that's being done on the North Island right now to be able to build that, the island and expand that. But May 6th, I believe, we did a virtual tour of Mary in Germany. So we had a factory acceptance test of Mary as a whole to be able to.
Oh, can I interrupt for 1 second? Mary is named for Mary Jackson, who is a NASA. It was I think 2 schools came up with the name Mary for Mary Jackson from the NASA mathematician who was a Hidden Figures aerospace engineer, actually. And so anyway, just wanted to say how Mary got her name.
See, I just drive right to the.
Well, see, that's, I told you, engineer, accountant, they all need me. Yeah.
Yes, I definitely do.
I translate. There you go.
The good news is we saw Mary in action on May 6th to be able to watch the cutting heads perform, how the panels are going to swing into place, how they're loaded into the 400-foot long device to be able to, and how it's controlled. So we were hoping to be in Germany on that date, but due to the COVID restrictions, we would have had to quarantine for 2 weeks in advance. But long story short, Mary is right now being disassembled and being ready for transport to Newport News, where she will come ashore there, and then will be barged to the South Island. We anticipate Mary showing up sometime between November 15th and November 21st. I'm kind of partial to November 19th. Hopefully that shows up. There's a little reason why, but we should be looking for an event sometime around there with the region to be able to see Mary and maybe touch and feel her, and then get her over to the South Island. We look forward to, she should be assembled by the March timeframe, 2022, and then start digging shortly thereafter, start boring through the bottom of the channel. So hopefully we'll see that in action, but very exciting times right now for that.
It really is.
Project.
So again, I could talk to you all for so long, but they did send me a warning. So we have 15 minutes. I'm going to ask questions, and I really like for you to answer them as briefly as possible, just so that we could go through them. I think what was really important about having this 30-minute segment is to let people know really the incredible leadership that we have in transportation in Virginia. And so we have the best people in these jobs. And so I just say that to you. I was posed this by a reporter just today. So I'm going to check what your answer would be. What is the greatest transportation challenge Virginia has? And we'll start with Commissioner Bridge.
The greatest transportation challenge, I think, long-term sustainability of funding.
Stephen Edwards.
Yeah, sustainability is cleaning of the air.
Clearly. Jennifer Mitchell.
For transit and rail, I'd say dealing with the new normal for transit and rail ridership, and what that's going to mean for the structure of service patterns longer term.
Excellent. I was posed this question by two people at the WTS reception. When you were in elementary school, what did you want to be when you grew up? Jennifer Mitchell.
I wanted to be an astronaut.
We have a spaceport, by the way.
I actually had a paper where I wrote, in it that I wanted to be an astronaut. I was in first grade, but I said, but I could never be an astronaut because I'm a girl. And the teacher wrote back and said, no, that's not true. Keep living your dream. So I'm in transportation instead.
Excellent. Stephen Edwards.
I always wanted to be a train driver when I was a kid.
A train driver.
Mhm.
Wow. It's not too late. We
It's not.
know people in rail, by the way.
I know people in rail, and I've got some
There
rail.
you go.
Yeah.
We could make news.
Yeah.
Commissioner Britt.
I wanted to be either a fighter pilot or an architect.
But in so many ways, you all really have fulfilled your dreams in slightly different ways. But Commissioner, you do fly a plane.
Every now and then. Your Department of Aviation is kind to let me take the yoke every now and then.
Yes. I haven't jumped on that flight yet, but yes, that is true. Okay, Stephen Edwards, what book are you reading for fun?
For fun? Oh boy, I'm not reading for fun at the moment, I'm afraid. I'm just reading.
I knew. Okay. I was going to, in my brain, I'm going, okay, this is really going to stump.
Yeah.
All right. So not for fun. I knew that would throw everybody, but because right now there's just, I feel like, there's just a waterfall coming towards all of us.
I got to get my bag out to check what I'm reading now. And I don't think I've got a book with me. But,
well, so do you have a favorite book?
I tend to read autobiographies. That's what I tend to read when I'm reading. So, and I'm normally reading when I'm flying. So I haven't flown.
Oh, exactly. I remember my first biography, Louis Pasteur. Isn't that funny? I was a little, anyway, second grade, St. Mary Magdalene. So Jennifer, what are you reading?
I'm in a book club. I just joined. I'm trying to do a little something in my life besides just working, and I'm in a book club. And I just started reading the book, and I believe it's called the Book of Lost Love. But I'm only about 10 pages into it. I'm not a good book club member, but trying to read.
I used to be. God, it's really. How about Commissioner Brett?
So this one you might understand this one, Secretary, and it's actually for fun. It's called Never Split the Difference, Negotiating as if your life depends on it. Well,
okay, we could have used that a few times, actually.
Well, and that's, knowing who we're up against, yes.
Okay, Stephen Edwards, who is your favorite secretary?
Okay.
Just kidding.
Win that one, Shannon.
The port is really known for incorporating values into their work and in the operations at the port. And so what do you believe is the most important value that we bring to our workplace?
I'm a firm believer that there's really two values. One in this industry is you have to have some empathy. People work 24/7 in our industry. They work difficult hours. you've got to have empathy for the fact people are putting themselves into running the port in front of some of their family issues all the time. So I think empathy is the big one.
Yes. Just so important. Jennifer, what do you believe, the most important value that people bring with them?
I think integrity. I think that, at the end of the day, somebody may not agree with all of your decisions or the way that you did things. But at the end of the day, if somebody knows that you always conducted yourself with integrity, that's all you're left with at the end of the day. So I personally think
word, right? It's just
your
so
word.
much of our credibility. Commissioner, anything
Yeah.
you can add?
I think one word that we all live by out of this administration is transparency. Being transparent in the actions and the decision makings that we've made are vitally important to be able to show the integrity of what we do. And I think to Jennifer's point too, and I really have to agree with Stephen as well, is empathy back, because as he said, the port's a 24/7 and the department's a 24/7 operation. And we've had our share of natural disasters where men and women of the department have gone out and worked. This last ice storm in February, we worked 25 days straight, 12-hour shifts, and many of them going home to a cold house without any power, and showing up the next day and doing the same thing back to it. So, we have transparency, integrity, and empathy, and what I'll say is, our people are our greatest assets. So while we're still on this subject, but we can't lose sight of that.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you, Stephen, I was very much in the same position. Somebody said, "What are you reading for fun?" And I thought, "Oh my gosh, do you read for fun?" I will say that one of the things that has, since being in this position, it's 24/7. We're working all the time. We're negotiating, we're building, we're trying to create partnerships. And then you deal with the natural disasters and the tree across the track, or, a hurricane, just so that it really is hard. And to be honest, that was really almost the point, that it is very challenging to leave this job and to kind of let your brain go, which is, why I think as part of my role is we have to enjoy the moments when you have this job, because, we give so much, and you all give so much to this. So as young people are coming into the workplace, what do you all think about what we can do to bring the best and the brightest into government, into transportation? What are the attributes that you're looking for? How do we, I say I work with the best people. How do we continue to bring really great people into the workplace? So Jennifer, do you want to, you're actually fielding right now a whole new authority. And so the challenges that go with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, it's not necessarily subject matter expertise, while that's good, but I think that having creativity and problem solving and attitude is just a lot of it. People can learn about the industry, but if somebody's got the right attitude and they're excited to learn, means more than anything. I think that what we need to offer is flexible workplaces, creative, opportunities to grow. I know in an organization like DRPT, we're relatively small. We don't have the types of growth opportunities that a big agency like VDOT might have, where they can move around more. So we're really trying to find ways to give people professional development opportunities, or opportunities to try something new. So.
Excellent. Stephen Edwards, what could you add to that?
Well, I do think transportation as a sector, you do look for self-starters. I mean, it is, I think you find certainly I look at my career, I look at the people in the ports careers, there are times when you're a young adult and you're put in positions where you're the sole person on the roll, or you're out on a limb, you're out on your own. And because the way I describe our industry is, we're a warehouse without a roof. You might be out on a Sunday night shift and it's pouring with rain, and you've got to start making some, real-time decisions, and you're there to make the call. So you need people who've got that initiative to make the call. I think our role is that mentorship to people to say, we recognize you've got to be self-starters, you've got to show initiative, you've got to be strong personalities in some ways, but then we've also got to give the mentorship as to say, hey, sometimes people are going to be out of their depth, or they're going to actually get something a little bit wrong, and that doesn't actually always matter. Right? I mean, as long as we're not breaking safety protocols, as long as we're within the safe boundaries of operating, we may not have got the perfect financial result all the time, because somebody had to make it. And I had a boss who once said to me, he said, "Look, we're sending you into this job. Just get 9 out of 10 decisions right, will you?" And it was actually pretty good advice, because it was his way of saying to me, if you get one wrong, I'm not going to hang you for it. Right? I accept that you're going to get 9 out of 10. 9 out of 10 is a good score. So I think as a mentor, mentorship to people who are quite often working on a self-starting basis out on their own is the critical piece.
Oh, so true. Commissioner Britch?
I think really the individuals that have a passion and a drive to be able to make change is paramount today. In an organization that's been steeped in history for the last 120 years plus, and I hear all the time, well, we've done it this way, why are we making the change? And well, that really makes my hair stand up on the back of my neck. But we have the younger generation coming in and saying, challenging the institution. I encourage that. And so certainly those individuals that have the desire for that change, want to make something better, that's what's going to propel us to the next stage. And we're on the advent of some level of connected and autonomous vehicles. What does that look like? And that's really going to change the landscape of our engineering community and electric vehicles and pods. And this is an exciting time to be in transportation over the next 15, 20 years and watch it evolve like that. And the younger generation are really going to take us forward much faster than where we are. So
I just couldn't agree more. I mean, I tell people all the time, I just love my job. It is 24/7. So, and I am going to look forward to reading books for fun again, but no, it truly is. And for those of you here, we were talking about the omnibus bill early on and how it was a financial commitment by the Commonwealth of Virginia to a multimodal transportation system. And what has been really important to me over these past 3.5 years was really connecting all the modes of transportation so that all of us understand how important having this integrated system is. During COVID, I think it was just really evident when you looked at the commitment across transportation from the Port of Virginia, rail, trucking, transit, aviation, barges, the commitment to transporting vital goods and connecting people to essential work, food, medicine, and now opportunity. And I will say that the role that transportation plays in people's lives each and every day is tremendous. And it's a great responsibility, and it's just so rewarding because it really touches human beings. It's very tangible. So with that, Muriel, I will check in with you to see if you have any questions.
I don't think we have any questions at this time, but I will give it a minute.
I will keep going.
Yes,
and
please.
then you could stop me.
Okay.
Okay, let me think of a really, really hard one. So infrastructure is a very hot topic right now. And, God knows we all hope that an infrastructure package passes. If you had the opportunity to meet with President Biden, Secretary Buttigieg, what's the one recommendation that you would make as far as an infrastructure package? What would you push for if you could name one thing? Jennifer Mitchell, only because I think I know what you would say.
Dedicated annual funding for passenger rail. So,
Yes.
and also a big program like Tiger or Build that can support multimodal projects, but for mega projects that can really provide substantial federal match, more than 100 million, but more in the 800 to $1 billion range for big mega projects that have multiple benefits.
Commissioner Brett.
Well, I think you started with the question that I'll end on is increase the funding for existing assets and make sure that we're investing in our existing assets before we start expanding.
And a lot of our expansion is really making the assets we have work better.
Well, I go back to the previous comment, sustainability in our funding stream and making sure that we have adequate funds to maintain our assets that we have in place today.
Yeah. And I'll go back to the omnibus transportation package. Because that passed, we were in a far more secure position when COVID hit. We had the additional funding. We had programs that we were standing up that were vital to all of this. It turned out, right? With special structures, with the TRIP program, that was a really important step. And then the budget amendment, we got through the special session to give the Commonwealth Transportation Board the flexibility to manage the reductions in transportation revenue so that we could keep all our projects in the pipeline without laying people off or canceling projects or delaying work. And I think that was the greatest contribution that transportation could make to our economic recovery. So Stephen Edwards, you're sitting there with the president and the secretary.
Yeah, well, we've had two answers already, but I think Go and I would agree with both of them. But I do think it's something that resonates from them anyway, which is, don't miss, thirdly, certainty of funding over time is critical. So let's take that now as a given. I would say don't miss the opportunity to use this to actually really look at the sustainability of the transport systems, because there is so much we can do in transportation to improve the sustainability as a whole, and we've got an obligation to do it. And I think this is a chance now to really put in place some good infrastructure. In the right area.
I agree, and have it integrated.
Yeah.
So, and because so much of it is has been siloed, and then how do we break that mold and really target the solutions? So I see Muriel up in the window. So we have a question.
We do have a question. A new coronavirus was found in young patients in Malaysia this week, and the experts are saying that the next pandemic is a matter of when, not if. What will we do differently in the next pandemic based on lessons learned from COVID-19?
Many, many lessons. Commissioner, would you like to start with that?
Oh, this is an easy one. I don't think that we really wrote the book on this one. Many of the lessons learned, we've been documenting for when and if the next pandemic happens. In fact, I think we're ready for it. We have the process down from the telework side. We have the process down from keeping our employees safe that report to the field, whether they're our construction and maintenance forces to our tunnel operators, traffic operations center. I feel fairly confident that we have a process in place to be able to keep the organization moving and continue to transform the landscape of the agency and be able to respond to incidences and emergencies as they occur. So, I'll be honest with you, the pandemic's one thing. We dealt with a gas crisis last week that we were going into conservation modes and thinking the worst, and we're thankful that the pipeline came back on sooner. So, the one thing that, and you might find this funny, but I was on the phone with our safety, security, and emergency management department, and there are actually thoughts about the solar flares and monitoring the solar flares for pipelines and transmissions and electrical outages that we're prepared for in advance, that we're monitoring that, in fact. So I think we stand in a much better place today than where we stood 18 months ago, and learning the plays on the field at the same time. As Deputy Commissioner Rob Carey would say, we're building the airplane while we're flying it. So last year, but I think we have built the airplane and we have the plan set for the next airplane. So I think we're fairly confident that we'll come through, maybe with a little bit of bruising, but I think we have a playbook to go by.
Yeah, I think once we were able to wrap our minds around what we were facing, we didn't really miss a beat. Work continued. In fact, some work actually accelerated. But Stephen Edwards, are there certain procedures you're keeping in place at the port from the pandemic?
We're following the governor's guidelines, so we're actually relaxing down now to, we were up until this weekend, we were mask mandatory. The governor put us into a spin on Friday night with an unexpected announcement that sent us spinning off to, okay, by Saturday 10 a.m. we were mask optional on that approach. And I think, I did what Steve said. I mean, the whole approach, I think if you've worked in transportation for your career, you've been through issue after issue after issue. And I point all the way back to hurricanes, from my perspective, like Hurricane Katrina, when that happened, when you suddenly learned that satellite phones weren't any good, but texting really worked. When the cell systems start collapsing, but how you communicate in crises. So unified commands and what they mean within an organization as to how you get the messaging out, critical to anything,
Right.
such as this. Because I think we've already got to remember that the real issue that people who work for us are looking for is, what does it mean for me? What does it mean for me and my family? And I think in general, the fact that the supply chains have worked, they've stayed open, has been a true success story through the whole of the pandemic. And I think our, in the Hampton Roads area, the trade unions have been hugely supportive. The municipalities we operate in have been hugely supportive. So I think the leadership from the administration through the municipalities, through the union leaderships, everybody has basically come together and said, okay, we need to work together. And nobody has tried to take an individual advantage from it. So I think Virginia, has been really successful. We have not had arguments in the press about how we're doing things. We've been able to really say we're all in this together and how we're going to get through it together. And some unified command has really helped.
I agree with you. Jennifer, are you keeping some of the procedures going forward beyond once the state of emergency lifted? What procedures might you keep in place?
Yeah, a lot of the transit agencies are keeping some of the same safety protocols in place. Obviously, even with the governor's new guidelines, masks are still required on buses and trains, which I think is a good thing. But a lot of the transit systems did go ahead and invest in new technologies for air filtration. And I think that will now be here to stay. I think from a service standpoint, we learned very quickly how to pivot into essential service mode. And it took some time, but I think with the lessons learned from the current pandemic, it would be a much quicker turnaround time for transit agencies to quickly be able to scale back services to really what's most essential and quickly implement their safety protocols that some of which are already maintaining.
So I would say, Muriel, that even through all of this, great achievements have been accomplished over this past year. And I think for those of you who are in transportation, I think we all recognize that the unexpected is a part of our lives. It's a part of how we live and manage the whole process. So for those who really enjoy that, you'll love transportation.
Well, thank you. I think we're pretty much out of time, but thank you, Secretary, for moderating. This was very informative, but it was also fun. So thank you all to our all our panelists, and thank you for everyone who has attended. And I hope everyone has a good evening.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.